We are joined by the Congress member for District 5 in the House of Representatives for the state of Tennessee. We're talking to Representative Andy Ogles. He does represent parts of Maury County, Metro Nashville, Williamson County, Wilson County, and he spent some time with the President of the United States in Memphis, talking about the Memphis Safe Task Force. Sir, thank you for being here with us. First of all, talk about the impact that you saw in Memphis and why you think this will be a good fit here in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the results, the metrics, the data matters. So you have a city, you know, it's the home, the birthplace of Elvis, or at least his legacy. You know, there were songs about Memphis, Walk Into Memphis, but it had become a crime-ridden city, the most violent city in the United States of America. And because of this surge, because of the commitment by President Trump and really the collaboration between the local, state, and federal level, the streets of Memphis are safe again. And, you know, I was able to talk to some of the residents, business owners. A woman was talking about her child was able to play in the yard, to ride his bike, that, you know, there had been a drive-by shooting and a bullet literally went through the wall of their home, but now the city's safe. And so this is not political. This is about the safety of one of America's jewels. You know, Middle Tennessee, Nashville is the capital. Many people would say that Memphis is the heart because of the music, the soul, and the food there. But that being said, it works, and it is working, and the people there are safer. And we should bring that, or consider at least bringing that to Nashville. You know, when you look at the 2024 crime data, Nashville is 13th for violent crime. Chicago is 14th. So we have more work to do here at home in Nashville.
Congressman, now the difference in population between Nashville and Memphis is not that far apart. There are more people here in Nashville than there are in Memphis, according to the population data I've been looking at here. However, Nashville does have dramatically lower homicides, almost nearly double less homicides than the city of Memphis does. So with all that in mind, and the crime stats kind of go across the board in that direction, it seems to be a much lesser violent city, according to the numbers here in Nashville, than Memphis. Why would you want to take a step like that, bringing a task force involving federal agents, maybe even the National Guard, to Nashville, being that we seem to have far less crime than the city of Memphis does?
Well, you've got to look at the crime holistically. It's not just murder, it's rapes, it's violent assault. And again, the crime data, the FBI data speaks for itself. But also understand that when you have a surge in a city like Memphis, some of those criminals are going to move out of that city. So whether it's Jackson, whether it's Nashville, whether it's other cities across America, you need to look at, you know, what do you do in preparation of what might come? And so I think it's important that we're diligent. And ultimately, you know, this is one of the situations where the governor is watching this very closely. He's very committed to keeping the state safe, to keeping, you know, obviously Memphis and Nashville, all the states safe. And so, but, you know, we shouldn't rule it out. And like I said, the FBI data shows violent crime, we're 13th in the nation. Chicago is 14th.
Congressman, where does this end? In other words, they're in Memphis. They've got the task force together. They've got the National Guard that is currently deployed, or at least a temporary court order there. But talking about being deployed there in Memphis, we know in Washington, D.C., the president recently announced that the National Guard up there is going to be on the streets in that particular city throughout the rest of his term. So here in Middle Tennessee, how far do you think this should go? Should the National Guard be used for law enforcement on a full-time basis, or is this just a temporary type of move?
It depends, right? You look at the data, look at the crime trends. What do we need to do to take back our streets, take back our communities? And when you go into the communities that are most affected by the crime, they're appreciative. And it doesn't matter, man, male, female, black, white, doesn't matter. They're appreciative of the fact that their kids can go out and play. Their kids can go to school without having to worry about a drive-by shooting. And so if you're telling me that we have to take extraordinary measures to keep our city safe and to protect our kids, I think we should do it.
Are you saying that you don't feel like everybody here in Nashville feels like their city is safe or their neighborhood is safe? Have you heard from people in Nashville asking for this kind of action?
Yeah, again, it depends on the community. There are parts of Nashville that are safe. There are other parts of Nashville that aren't safe. And then I just simply go back to the data. So don't take my opinion, your opinion, other opinions. Let's look at the data. And when you look at violent crime across the country, Nashville is in the top 15. Nashville is worse than Chicago. And so that's murders, that's rapes, that's violent assault. And so we need to have that conversation of what are we going to do to fix that? Does that mean a stronger commitment from the mayor of Nashville? Does that mean a coordination with state police or the National Guard? Ultimately, let's have that conversation. Let's let the governor weigh in. And when the time is right, then you take the steps to get to that desired outcome. But at the end of the day, these are people's lives. These are their livelihoods. And we have an obligation to keep this country safe.
Of course, the mayor of Nashville has been on record saying that he does not think this is the right move for the city to make in this particular case. And the city of Memphis and their leaders said much the same thing. What is your response to those who feel like this is a touch too far and we don't need this kind of heavy-handed approach to the city?
Well, I think initially Memphis was hesitant to accept that type of help, but I was just in Memphis. I was just there with the president, and they are grateful for the help because this means their economy, their people are safe. There's a revival that's going to take place. And again, you just look at the stats. When you have people like this roaming our streets that are raping individuals, when you look at people like this that are roaming our streets, raping people, it's time that we do something about it. So this speaks louder than anyone's opinion. When you have lives that have been shattered, lives that have been lost because of criminality, this can be prevented. It can be stopped. And if the mayor's not going to do it, I can tell you the governor is committed because we see that it's working in Washington, D.C. We see that it's working in Memphis. And if necessary, it can work in Nashville.
Have you spoken to the governor directly about this, and what has he said to you about the possibility of doing something like this here in the capital city?
Well, I did speak to the governor, but I did not speak specifically about this. I was with the governor yesterday in Memphis, and at the end of the day, the governor is watching this. He's monitoring this, and the governor has shown a commitment to fighting crime in our state. And so with that, I trust the governor, I trust our president, and I'll let them make that decision when the time comes.
All right, Congressmember Andy Ogles has been our guest here this morning. Thank you so much, Congressmember. We could launch into all kinds of different things. Iran, obviously, is something that's happening. We're still dealing with a partial government shutdown that's out there. Is there any message out there on either one of those topics, which are the other two big ones, since I've got you here, that you want the people of Middle Tennessee to know about either one of those topics, even though I know neither one right now is up for vote there in the House in particular. But what is it that you want to deliver to people, because our sons and daughters are over there fighting in harm's way right now over in the Middle East. And of course, certain people are impacted by this partial government shutdown that's happening. A lot of folks, whether they're with the Coast Guard, FEMA, or TSA, are not getting paid right now, and they haven't been getting paid for several weeks.
Yeah, so the House, we've done our job. We passed the funding bills. And when you look at the fact that Homeland Security is not being funded, TSA agents are not being funded, CISA, which protects our country from cyber attacks from countries like China and North Korea, is not being funded. Some of our assets that sniff out nuclear weapons at our ports and our borders is not being funded. This is a national security issue. The Democrats should be ashamed of themselves that they're holding this country hostage, and quite frankly, they're putting us in harm's way. But ICE was deployed Monday to our airports. We're already seeing a difference being made, and you'll continue to see the difference. And I was with the president yesterday on Air Force One, and one of the things that he mentioned is that the talks and negotiations to get our agents to get the resources deployed, to get them funded, are underway. So hopefully we'll see something happening in the next few days. But ultimately, this is up to the Democrats. They're the ones that are holding this country hostage.
Of course, Congressman, I have to ask the question, because people are going to ask, if the Republicans have control of the House, if Republicans have control of the Senate, if Republicans have control of the White House, then why is it the Democrats' fault that this is happening, sir?
Because the Democrats, it takes 60 votes in the Senate, and the Democrats are playing games and not voting for keeping our country safe.
All right. Congressman Andy Ogles has been our guest here this morning. Thank you so much, Congressman, for your time. We really